Hello and welcome, I'm Lloyd, and this is the Dressing Gown Diary, review show of the pool stages of the 2023 World Cup. It all started with a bang. Friday, September the 8th, saw France host the first game of the World Cup against New Zealand, where of course they secured a very memorable win. The first weekend was everything, but there were some issues. There were some issues with the organisation in terms of getting into the ground. There were issues with delivery of booze, because let's be honest, a lot of people want to booze heavily. There were also issues around, I don't know what on earth World Rugby did with the anthems, the choral effort, but fortunately most of those issues seem to be resolved. So let's just take a quick walk through each pool to see how it went. Well, Group Pool A saw, as I said, France beat New Zealand in the opening game, and they never really looked back. France were stuttered a little bit with Dupont being injured. There were question marks about how well they could progress, but they did everything they needed to do. Italy will be incredibly disappointed with how they performed. They started well with wins against Namibia and Uruguay, but then got dispatched by New Zealand and then France as well. So they will be disappointed. Uruguay and Namibia did well in a group that they weren't expected to really get anything from. But ultimately, New Zealand lost their first pool game ever, and France came out on top as they progressed to the quarterfinals. Pool B. When you've got three of the top five of the world rankings, you know there are going to be some seismic smashes going on. First weekend saw Ireland take on Scotland, and Ireland had more... Let's rewind that. Ireland didn't take Scotland on in the first weekend. They did that in the last weekend. The first weekend saw South Africa take on Scotland. Scotland landed a few punches, but didn't take their opportunities and ultimately came up a little bit short as South Africa brought the power game and had enough. Ireland also looked good early on, but they didn't play their important games until the last two when they took on South Africa and Scotland. The South Africa-Ireland game was historic, massive clashes, such physicality. Again, Ireland somehow found a way to win though. They lost 4 of their first lineouts kicking for the corner, but yet found a way through. This shows they are the number 1 team in the world, and they're still the team to beat for my mind in this tournament. South Africa, power game again, 7-1 bench. They'll probably end up going 8-0 at some point, but they are just bringing power and commitment, and they are also a team to watch. I think Romania will be disappointed with how they performed, never really got going, but ultimately, unfortunately for Scotland, they were pulled in a pool that was so competitive. That's one of the issues when you draw it so far ahead of the tournament and you see what happens. But still, you see South Africa finishing second, Ireland moving on and showing that they're world number 1 team. Pool C, one of the most competitive out there. You had, before the World Cup started, Fiji were ranked 9th in the world, Australia 10th, Wales 11th, Georgia 12th, and Portugal 15. It was very, very tight. Opening weekend saw an epic battle, Wales and Fiji, both teams securing a bonus point for 4 tries. It was such an open game, and Fiji maybe could have closed it out with that long pass at the end of the game, but unfortunately didn't. Portugal won so many friends with their performances during the World Cup. Indeed, the performance of probably the pool stages, beating Fiji in the final game. The whole of the world wanting Fiji to secure that 1 point, so Australia would be sent packing. So everyone could say it probably is the result that the world wanted. Portugal got the win, Fiji got the bonus point, Australia went home. Thanks very much. Cheers for coming. Eddie Jones losing 7 out of 9 matches he's been in charge is not a great performance from him. But still, Wales, they found a way to perform. They're a pragmatic side, but everyone knows what they've got to do. There's so much intent in the defence, the tackling wise. Wales against Fiji, a water high mark of over 250 tackles made in that match. But they're not worried about making the tackles. They're happy in their defensive shape. They're happy that they can scramble. And what Wales are very effective with at the moment is when they do get an opportunity to score, they take it. Their visits, their returns on points in visits to the opposition 22 is very high at the moment. They are executing their opportunities. They're not playing much rugby outside the 22, but they are executing those opportunities, which Gatland will be delighted with. Bringing these new young players through. I mean, Jack Morgan, the few will forget his 50-22 from his own 22 against Australia when Australia missed their line-out jumper and he booted it, cleared through. I mean, that was a very, very big win for Wales against Australia. Few saw such a one-sided game. Australia under pressure to score tries, and Wales were just pragmatic, took the points on offer. And this is a trend that I've seen through the World Cup so far, that lots of teams are looking to kick for the corner and try and squeeze a rolling maul pushover try. They're hard to come by. The stats are 1 in 5 are successful. So I'm not quite sure why teams are taking this approach. In the first quarter, just take the points, move on. If there's a benefit of a yellow card because there've been a succession of penalties, then it's an entirely different scenario. If it's just kicking for the corner to try and score points, unless the game is either you're out of sight and you've got a lot of points on the cards, or you're chasing the game. If it's close, I just don't understand the logic behind it for me. We saw, Scotland in their last game against Ireland kicked for the corner twice and came away with nothing. Ireland against South Africa did the same thing early on. Kicked for the corner, lost the lineouts. Australia did it against Wales, but they were chasing the game and needed tries. So it's a slightly different scenario. But again, Portugal performed admirably. Fiji have come through from the group. Australia are out. Georgia made some progress, but ultimately the draw against Portugal favours Portugal rather than Georgia. Excuse me. Moving on to Pool D. Well, England, it was all to do against Argentina on day one. Controversy as well with the way World Rugby have dealt with the bunker process. I think the bunker process is good, but Curry's sending off is questionable when you see tackles by Jesse Creel and Dan Biggar in the same weekend that weren't that different. So England could feel aggrieved, and I'm sure they would have done if they'd come up short against the Argentinians. But the Argies, that was one of the worst performances from a Tier 1 team I've ever seen. They lost their heads, were unable to structure points. And what did England do? They were just pragmatic. They kicked three drop goals, very good from George Ford, moving the team forward, kicking for territory, not worrying too much about having the ball. It was a very pragmatic and rewarded win, followed up by the second match against Japan. Again, a bit lucky though, because Japan had opportunities and dropped the ball in attacking places. And Joe Marler then somehow gets a header on the ball at 13-12. And then England run away with it in the end. Samoa, in the last game for England, they were in the game and then gave away a needless penalty late on. Good to see Farrell done on the shot clock. He's been very, very close to the shot clock time. Certainly in the Six Nations, he's one of these players that tries to run the clock down and then take the kick on 1 or 2 or 3 seconds. And this time he came up short. But Pool D, yeah, Samoa will be disappointed with how they performed. Japan, the last game against Argentina was a good match, but it was Japan will be a bit disappointed that they didn't really land a punch on England or Argentina and get a win to follow up with how they performed in the 2019 World Cup. And then Chile made up the numbers, but great to see them there. The Tier 2 teams invariably have done reasonably well. I mean, people like Portugal have massively overperformed, and World Rugby needs to look at how they can help these teams develop. It's not just about the Tier 1 teams. If anyone had seen the video of Portugal arriving back in Lisbon Airport, just the emotion from the fans to see this, they were so proud of the team. That World Rugby need to find a way of helping these teams develop. Clearly Samoa, Fiji are benefiting from having the team, the Drua team, and lots of their players are playing in that competition and have developed. So World Rugby have challenges now about how to develop the game further. It's not just about the 8 that go through. Because unfortunately now, we started the tournament with 20, 12 have gone home, it's done and dusted, and we move on to the quarterfinals this weekend. There'll be a preview of that coming up later this week, so stay strapped in. I hope you haven't missed me too much. If you've got any questions, drop me a note and I'll do my best to answer them next up. But this is the Dressing Gown Diary, over and out.